Chat a little bit about the album, which came out September 19th. Am I correct on that?
You are.
Okay,
You
so
are.
it's been in the world now for about three-quarters of a year.
Right.
What what's been the reaction from fans, colleagues, et cetera, et cetera? What do they think of Forevermore now that it's people have had plenty of time to really listen through the songs?
Yeah, sure, sure. I'm fortunate, Luke. The reviews have been good. Very, very good. Um, I'm on a label out of New York City called OMAD Records. It's John DeNicola's label. It's his boutique record label. So he's been he's been very good about promoting the record. Luckily, I just have to write the songs, record them, and perform them live. So it's gotten some real nice attention, on a modest level, particularly with non-com radio stations. It charted on the national roots rock radio charts. I think it got number 32 was, and I'm quite happy with number 32. I'm okay with that.
It's
Yeah,
a chart. That's the important thing.
and then I get to talk to guys like you about music. And so that's a nice way to spend time too. So yeah, the reaction's been great amongst the fans. And I got a good fan base in Europe and particularly in Germany. And I was over there, about a month after the record came over. Last October, I was over for a 4-week tour with my acoustic trio show, which is a little bit of an oddball show, meaning that it's myself on acoustic guitar and I have two orchestra people, and that's what makes it a little bit odd. But I think, but in a positive way, I have an excellent violinist from Korea, from Seoul, and she accompanies me, and I have an excellent young man playing the contrabass. So it's kind of an orchestral pop, I guess, or Baroque pop. And the only reason I say that is because I've been asked many times how to describe it, and I have no idea because I'm so close to it, Luke. I'm not objective, but long answer to your simple question. Reaction's been great, man. I feel blessed.
It's really good. You mentioned the violin. Um, the biggest musical motif that stood out listening through the album was the violin guitar duet combination on Temporary Virtue, which I'm sure I've heard that it's been used in pop and rock before, but not frequently. Rare enough that
Right.
even working here on a pop music radio station that plays, I'm in the studio, I'm looking at the playlist. It's 70s and 80s music primarily. Still not a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm homing in on just that, but where did you get the idea to combine the two? Because the tone of the two combined is I think it's really cool.
Wow. Thank you so much. I was born in 1963, and the youngest of four kids, and there was always music in the house. And naturally, growing up in the 60s, essentially, uh, I heard Eleanor Rigby. I heard I Am the Walrus when I was 4 years old, and it stuck. I absorbed it like a sponge. Now, I don't know if 56 years later it decided to come out in the form of that song, Temporary Virtue. But I guess what I mean is from a very, very young age, I heard the combination in, like you said, pop music, which, Eleanor Rigby, 1966, or that was considered a pop song, an unusual one. I Am the Walrus, even more unusual. And so, I guess that kind of just sunk in with me that, yeah, of course I love guitars. That's my go-to. But you can also, on certain songs, not necessarily every song on the record, but certain songs, a little bit of violin. And in this case, on that song, Temporary Virtue, there's also a fantastic cellist, a guy named Brian Standifer, who's a bit of an Austin legend. He's worked with Alejandro Escovedo for many years. And so on that song, there's, of course, myself and a bunch of guitars and a bunch of harmonies. That's kind of what I do. but it has the extra sort of cachet of violin and cello. So I hope that answers
It
your
does.
question a little bit.
No, it does. At what point in your career do you start to go, you know what, I can include this? Being in a band like the Size, you're not going to be going back to like 1992. You're probably not going to have a cello and a contrabass on stage going all the time. It's a little different. But at what point in your career do you go, and maybe it's just a matter of being solo and you have more options because you can decide versus figuring out what the band decides. When do you
Right.
make the shift to go, let's try this. Let's try this.
Yeah.
How does that evolve?
It's a pretty excellent question. And the reason I say that is because, the Size heyday was over 30 years ago. And that was a power pop rock and roll band, guitar driven all the way. We were produced by Ed Stasium of Ramones fame. And so you're 100% right. There wasn't a lot of discussion going, what string section should we bring in for this next song? And as the years have gone by, and I plugged back into a solo career in 2015, you pretty much nailed it because it is actually a solo career. I'm no longer, and I love the Size and I love that whole legacy of the Size, but I'm no longer involved in what I would describe as a musical democracy. It's not voting. And believe me when I tell you, I love those guys like brothers. That was a real democracy, and that's part of the reason it worked. So now I'm in a situation. Of course, I'm a little bit older. That's being generous. A lot older is probably more like it. But I feel great and I feel creative and I'm still touring. And so I made the decision like, yeah, I'm going to take all these influences I heard growing up in the late 60s and early 70s and plug them in on a sonic palette, if you will, in 2023. And I also have a great advantage of being produced by John DeNicola. And John is of Dirty Dancing fame, Hungry Eyes, and of course, I've had the time of my life. And so he has a wonderful, beautiful state-of-the-art recording studio located in a barn, an old rustic barn, not in the city. This is in upstate New York. And so he also is a mature musician, a man of a certain age, like myself. And we're kind of at the point now where if one of us has an idea, it could be, glockenspiel, whatever it is, we're going to try it, Luke. We're going to use it. We're going to record it, track it, and see how it sits in the song, in the track. And that's kind of what we've done with the Forevermore record. We took our time. Because it's John's studio. It's not like we were on a lockout somewhere at the record plant in New York City, looking at the clock, going, "Okay, we better hurry up." And so it was a really lovely way to record in an atmosphere of calm and not letting time, a ticking clock, dictate our decision making. And so, therefore, long answer, long way of a very simple question you asked. We're able to kind of indulge ourselves a little bit.
Was there an instrument that you really were like, let's try this, and it didn't quite work because it didn't quite fit, or a little too extreme, or something? What was
Uh-huh.
the outer limit of experimentation?
I have to say honestly, in regard to the Forevermore record, we tried so many different, I want to say crazy things, but we both have a fascination and love for an older period of time sonically, in the days of analog recording. There wasn't a single thing we tried that didn't make it on that record. And I'm talking about harmonium, dulcimer. I mean, I would personally have never thought of that. And that is the beautiful thing about having an excellent producer. I have ideas, of course, but, mainly my parts are got a couple acoustic guitar tracks, a bunch of electric guitar tracks, a bunch of vocals. I'm a Brian Wilson fanatic, Everly Brothers fanatic. I like very much harmonies and so. And then the producer's job, after my sort of parts are done, is to just run with it, just run with the track. And so, I may have had an idea of a guitar line, and John DeNicola, is a multi-instrumentalist, and he would then say, what about that on a dobro? And the answer for me, maybe 30 years ago, I would have, stiffened up a little bit. Well, I don't know. I'm at the point now, yeah, dobro, why not? It isn't, why would you do that? It's, why wouldn't you? And so dulcimer, fine. Dobro, fine. Harmonium, fine. Tambora, fine. Whatever you want to use. And there wasn't a single thing that guy laid down that we didn't love. That's an honest answer.
Well, how long did it take you to make the album with all these ideas floating around?
It wasn't done, Luke, in one session. It was the reason it came about is because I'm up here on Cape Cod right now, Massachusetts, looking after my 92-year-old mom. After my father passed away, my siblings and I have been taking care of my mother, to keep her in her own house, and but she does need assistance. And so, I've lived in Austin, Texas since 2001. I've been based there for 23 years. But because I'm on the East Coast, and because I have such a long history with John through the Size, and his production company is the reason the Size got a deal with Virgin way back when in '91. So, John, our friendship never wavered, but our working relationship didn't reconnect until I was back on the East Coast. And instead of an all-day plane ride, I could get in the car, provided I had someone look after mommy. I could get in the car and in 4 or 5 hours be working with him. So that's kind of how it came about, our reestablishing our working relationship. And as a result, we did, I don't know, 6 or 7 sessions, maybe 2 or 3, maximum 4 days, took our time. So it was unusual because most of the records I've done, and I can only speak for myself, is you go into the studio, you do a lock-in for 2 weeks, or, in the Size case, that was a little bit indulgent. That was at A&M Studios. That was a 3-month crazy, that's another story in itself for another day. I don't know how much time we have, but for my record, but Forevermore, Luke, we did it sporadically. It was about, I'd say, half a dozen recording sessions, and we work quickly. We're not rushed, but we work quickly because we have such a good rapport with each other, and there's not a lot of verbal instructions that need to happen. If I'm in the vocal booth, he's like, "Okay, you hearing a harmony? Yep. Okay, rolling." And there we go. And, we record quickly. So it wasn't done in one long session like most records I've done. Like I say, it was done in about, I'd say, 6 sessions, I guess the end of 2001, 2002. And we even were recording as late as the first quarter of 2023. I'm saying 2001. What I really mean is 2021.
Right.
Yeah. And so anyway, that's the answer. It was done over a number of sessions.
Did you write the lyrics or the music first? The lyrics, I mean, for all of the musical aspects of these songs, the words are still forefront from what was my impression. So how did the songwriting process work?
I generally hear the music first. I may get a song title. I may hear a phrase and, pull out my phone and press the record button. What's a phrase? With a steady hand, boom, okay, record. And maybe I'll come down when I get home and I'll put it on a sheet of paper with a steady hand. And maybe 5 minutes later, I'll go, that's not a very good song title. But at least I have the pen in my hand and at least the paper in front of me. Generally speaking, it's the music first. And oftentimes for me, of course, I can only speak for myself. I have a lot of songwriter friends, and almost everybody has a different sort of MO, different method of writing. And I tend to hear melodies in my head. That is like the first, my go-to. Could be first thing in the morning, could be the last thing in the evening. Often while driving, I'll hear a melody and I'll pull up my phone, drive with my left hand and get the phone and, da 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 da, boom. Might just be 10 seconds. So generally I hear the melodies and then I'll pick up a guitar. I can also play a little bit of piano, but generally it's guitar. And I'll kind of flush out the chords to the melody I'm hearing. And usually lyrics are the final stage of the song. What is it I want to sing about today? Is it a relationship song? Is it a song about recovery? I've been in recovery for a long time for addiction, and I've been sober for years. And it's funny because back in the old days, I would do everything to get out of my head to write songs. Now it's the complete opposite. It's the complete opposite. A nice strong espresso, and I'm good to go. So it's funny how it's evolved over the years. And marijuana is legal here in Massachusetts, so I'm not saying anything untoward. And I wouldn't know your listeners what choices to make in their lives. But I had to get sober, and it's the best decision I ever writing. Music first, lyrics second.
Well, on that point, and on the music, I've found this fascinating.
Yes.
I noticed all of the keys were what I call like the black keys on a piano. Is how I'll usually look at stuff in a keyboard sense. So like F sharp or B or E flat or C minor, but they were all the ones that are based around those keys. Every single song on the album. Was that intentional by chance? Are you drawn towards those types of keys as opposed to C, G, etc.? Right.
Yeah, I have to say I've done a lot of interviews for this record, and you're the very first person to notice that. So obviously you play a little bit. I'm assuming you play piano if you mentioned the black keys. Okay. So I'm really thrilled you mentioned that. There's a reason for that, and you are 100% right. They're all in oddball keys that are a pain in the neck to play on guitar. But for very, very many years, over 30, even 40 years, I am tuned down a half step. My guitar, all the guitars, all the instruments are in E flat, or in an orchestral world, they call it Baroque tuning. And if the bass guitar and the electric guitars and the acoustic guitars are in E flat, I might be playing in E flat, and you as a pianist, Luke, goes to a piano and he's like, why is this song in F sharp minor? That's an oddball key.
Yeah.
So it's an awesome observation, and I have to say I'm kind of impressed that you noticed that. And so that's your answer. I'm tuned down to E flat. The size were tuned down to E flat. And I discovered that as a kid learning guitar because my big musical heroes were Phil and Don Everly. And they had a little thing that they called their little Nashville cheater. As you know, their vocals were sublime. They were tuned down to E flat. So as a young, 13, 14-year-old kid trying to learn, never felt like this till I kissed you. Well, my brain was saying G, E minor, G, E minor. And then when I play it to the record, I'm like, wait a minute, because this is before I discovered tuning down. I'm in concert key. Why am I then going G sharp, F sharp minor? Because then I have to bar it. I can't play it in first position.
Right.
So that's how I discovered Luke, the little Nashville cheater. I didn't know what it was called back then. So I'm like, okay, I figured out they're tuned down to E flat. And I'm talking about 1982 or 3 or so when I discovered this. And I've been tuning that way ever since. So bravo to you for noticing the oddball keys to these songs.
Oh, I'm glad that you focused it that way. I was kind of honestly hoping that was more of the answer. And it was by chance, just like that. There was an intentionality There was
Yeah.
there was a purpose for doing that to come up with
Yeah.
a certain approach. Because every so often you'll hear that on a certain album. I remember like American Fool by John Mellencamp's album. Like I think now, granted, I think almost everything was on the key of A. I remember being struck by that, like, wow, same key. And maybe there was a simplicity, and maybe there was a desire for that, or maybe, like you said, the Nashville Cheater approach, which coincidentally 1982 again on that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Oh,
like
really?
what
Okay.
yeah, but I like when there's that approach to let's
Yeah.
try to make a bit of a theme to this that puts another thread through all of this. Do you find that the keys match, even though you write the music first and then the
Yeah.
lyrics? Do you find that that sets a tone at all for your lyricism? I mean, it's Forevermore is not exactly it's probably not the most buoyant, super happy lyrical album either.
Right.
It's not a
Right.
downer album either, but
Right. Right.
does that ever connect the two, the vibe of the lyrics with the vibe of the music?
100%. And you know, another thing, the final thing I'll say about being tuned down half a step is it gives the music, in my opinion, doesn't mean I'm right, just my opinion. It gives the music a bit more darkness. It gives the music a bit more of a lower tone, literally, because literally it is a half step down. And so, you know, I have been told by longtime friends of mine, Robert, how come you don't write happy songs? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I still don't know after all these years. Um, you know, but that lower register, and I love it for singing. I love it for singing. That lower register absolutely influences the lyrical content. I don't know why exactly, other than to say you're a musician. So otherwise, if you're on, you know, hang on, you know, dun dun dun. Let's say the Louie Louie, ba ba bam, dun 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 dun. Those are all major chords, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're probably going to go to a vocal space that is a little more up, a little more, you know. And my songs tend to be in minor keys, not all, but most. I'm not exactly sure why that is, and I try not to analyze it too much. Basically, when a song falls out of the sky for me, I nail it. I write it down, and it doesn't always happen like that. Some songs stay in your brain for months, some for years, and it's just like this reoccurring treadmill going on in your head. I could be driving going, why do I know that song? Oh, yeah, I wrote that. Oh, yeah, that's old. You know, there's a song on the Forevermore album called Safer Inside. Beautiful song, in my completely subjective opinion. And I hadn't even really considered it, was doing all new material. And then John DeNicola, the producer, we had recorded some demos during the Size days at his apartment in New York City. So I would have been around 90 or 91. And he said, do you remember this song? And he sent it to me. I'm like, I do now. I had totally forgotten about this song. It was like a knockoff, boom, co-write with back in the day. And so I listened to it. I said, you know, I'm really liking the song. So in the end, it was included on the record. And yeah, it's just you just never know where these songs are going to come from, and you don't know if they're going to come quickly or slowly. And sometimes you have to put them down and walk away, and you know, a higher power will let you know when it's time to finish the song. You know, if you try and force it, I mean, if you said to me, okay, if Luke said, Robert, I need you to write a song today about mozzarella cheese, I could do it. I could do it because I know how to write songs as a song craft. I'm not saying it would be a particularly good song, but I could, by the end of the day, here's your song about mozzarella cheese. I could do that. But with my own material, I try not to force it. I try not to push it too hard, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does. End of Time.
Long answer.
That's okay, but it's the proper answer. It's the full answer. End of Time got the video treatment. Why
Yeah.
that track in particular?
That is a good question because there's 10 songs on the album. So I also had to ask myself, what is going to be the song for the video? I like the sort of dreamy feel of that song. I love the outro, which is like, again, Brian Wilson influenced, Beach Boys. I think it's five. I have to go back and live, and I don't listen to my own stuff very often. I record them and then it's over. But of course, I know at the end, and I, also a brilliant musician, but he's a great videographer in Austin studio, and he has a couple of little locations. It's in a little Texas town south of Austin called Buda. And so I had been speaking to him. He's a friend as well. And he's like, I said, I'm thinking about doing a video for this, and I'm trying to figure out what song to do. And we kind of started discussing numbers and, okay, what's your budget? And I said, well, I'm your typical poor musician. I don't really have a budget, but this is what we can make work. And he said, okay, so we're not talking about doing 10 different locations here, here, here. He said, pick a simple song. Let's go into my studio. Maybe we can do one other location. We can do it for X amount of dollars. And so that's kind of why I picked that song, because it has sort of a tranquility to it. And I thought it would lend itself good to just like, boom, zoom in on the camera, a couple of slow-mo shots, show all my wrinkles at 61 years, which, believe me, I've earned them. And yeah, that's kind of how we chose that song. I think if we had chosen more of an up-tempo song, we might have been looking at going all over the place, many different locations, which would have been fine if I had an unlimited video budget, which I did not. So
That's okay. It's still a good video. That's all that matters. It doesn't have to be the biggest budget video ever. Sometimes those things don't go over well, and sometimes it's the low budget ones that go over really well. You never know for sure. It's the quality, not the dollar amount. So what's to wrap up? What's next after you're doing the touring? Are you already thinking of another musical project, or what's next?
So, as you may know, it sounds like you've done your homework, and I'm grateful for that. And I also have a main gig with Patricia Vaughn. She's an Austin singer-songwriter, Latina, and that's a kind of my main gig, really. And so we're going to be performing in Los Angeles. We're going on a 10-day tour of California, starting August 1st. I'm flying out there. And then we have a 25-date tour, Patricia Vaughn tour, in Europe in the fall. Then I'm going on my own acoustic trio tour in September of 2025. So the real answer to your question is yes. I'm about halfway through a new CD, a new record, again with producer John DeNicola. I got 5 songs done. And my longtime size partner, Tommy Pluta, who's a multi-instrumentalist, is going to cut drum tracks this Friday. So how about that?
Very
Because
nice.
I'm not a drummer. And I can play a little bit, but not good enough to record, that's for sure. So yeah, I'm actually working right now and on a follow-up CD to Forevermore, and that'll be out in September of 25. Then I go on tour. So the ball just keeps rolling. It just keeps going.
That's very good. By the way, is that a Rickenbacker behind you? That guitar?
Yes, that's my baby. That is a 1966 Rickenbacker 330. It's almost as old as I am. It's my Luke. It's my baby. I've been playing it for 40 years.
Figured.
Back in the old days, back in the old size days, I was endorsed by Rickenbacker. And of course, there's always the big debate with guitar nerds, which I include myself in that category. It's not Rickenbacker, it's Rickenbacker. However, I'm not making a conclusion on this. Adolf Rickenbacker was from Switzerland. I've toured Switzerland. many times. I can speak a little bit of German. I guarantee you, 100%, his name was not produced Adolf Rickenbacker. It was Adolf Rickenbacker, mein Freund. Das ist sehr gut. But he emigrated to America, early 20th century, started the company, and changed his name from Bacher, Acher, which is the German or Austrian or Swiss, in this case Swiss. It's all the German language. To Acker. He Americanized his name. Legally, he did do this. So it's funny because with guitar nerds, self-professed guitar nerds, and that's not a bad thing. I can get lost all day long talking about old guitars.
Okay.
So some folks would say, Robert, you're pronouncing it wrong. It's Rickenbacker. And technically, I guess that's true because Adolf did change his last name. However, I still say Rickenbacker. Whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, I guess is totally irrelevant. It's just mindless conversation, which I like to indulge in mindless conversation from time to time too. But so I've heard it pronounced both ways.
And it's still a good guitar. That's the most important thing. It's a classic.
It's an unbelievable guitar. It gets one sound. It isn't the most versatile guitar. It's a one-trick pony, basically, in my opinion. But what a glorious ride that pony is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true.
Down the jingle jangle highway of rock and roll.
Very true. Without that guitar, we don't have a whole lot of sound. So glad you're one of the ones that play it. So that's very good. So this has been fun. A blast. Robert LaRoche, Forevermore. If anyone is listening to this, well, they're probably already listened to the album, and for whatever reason, not go listen. I'll be interviewing John DeNicola tomorrow, actually, about this and another one of his projects as well. So kind of a twofer here, but thank you for doing this album and looking forward to obviously more coming from you in the future.
Good to be with you today.
You as well. Take care. All the best, and thanks for all the musical chat.
Thanks so much, Luke.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And especially the most recent release, King of His Own World with Sweetback. Well, let's catch up on all of it, but that's the main focus here. And then also want to get into Forevermore a little bit, because of course you were involved in that project. And I was talking yesterday to Robert LaRoche.
Yes.
King of His Own World.
Yes.
Who was Tim Lawless? Tell anyone watching, describe him.
Tim was a extremely talented close friend of mine. We met in 9th grade, and I first heard him sing anything. It was My Cherie Amour by Stevie Wonder. Now Tim is was a shortish Irish fella, but he could sound like Ronnie Isley or Stevie Wonder, or Donny Hathaway might have been the closest. And Tim was, he was the king of his own world. Tim had so much talent, and we were in a band called Sweetback in the early, I guess it would be like 74, 75, 76, somewhere in there. And it was a 7-piece horn band, 2 horns. One of our horn players went on to play with Billy Joel, Rich Canada, and then replaced by Jeff Lang, who was on this most recent recording of King of His Own World. But the lyric kind of explains Tim. He was he used to have an expression, "I'm doing the hang of life," is what he'd say all the time. And that was Tim. I mean, he'd sit at a table with some coffee and loved to shoot the breeze and wanted you to kind of hang out and just, it's hard to explain him. Supremely talented and a hard worker, but loved his relaxation, loved his fun. He would always bring some humor to whatever he was doing. You do a recording session with him and you'd be in stitches because he was just a funny guy. And that was Tim. He sang. He did a lot of. He worked with. I remember Debbie Gibson. He did a bunch of background vocals for, and he made a career out of singing. Um, he was the first singer in a band called the Funk Philharmonic, which is kind of it's like a Tower of Power style band, and he was the original singer in that. And he's just we spent 4 years. I spent many years with him from ninth grade till to when Sweetback started in the early '70s. And Sweetback lasted about 4 or 5 years. We did some originals. We were approached by Modern Records, I guess, Bearsville, maybe it was Bearsville at the time, to do some original stuff, and they wanted us to do this cover, and we just, some of the guys wanted to keep making a living with club work, and some of us wanted to do originals. So I guess that's what broke the band up. But um, I just this song, people say it sounds a little Steely Danish. Um, we did a lot of Steely Dan covers, and Tim really liked doing that. He had a Mike, he could do a Mike McDonald voice too. Um, and that's what it prompted me when he passed away last September. Um, after 3 years of struggle and in the hospital, and we kept thinking he was going to pull out of it, and so the song is just a tribute to him. I thought I should get um, the guys who we played together with in Sweetback. So I hadn't worked with the drummer Bob Myers in forever, and Ken Favre, the guitarist, has been a close friend, and he actually played on a couple of my records. Jeff Lang, a sax player he's so good. He's playing three horns on this. He's playing alto, tenor, and baritone on this recording, and I don't know. I don't know if that explained Tim to you, but he was you can't what's the line? Uh, I can't remember the line, but it explains it pretty well. Yeah, um, it's not coming to me right now, but there's a line in the song that really explains Tim. The spirit that's running free. You just can't stop him from doing that. That's just how he was. He did things on his own terms, and had a wealth of talent and humor, and that's it.
How did you know how to, I mean, you kind of described it with some of the descriptive lyrics, but how did you know the right type of song in a lyrical sense to write about him to get the tribute just right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not a lyricist per se. Um, I do work with lyricists, and I do edit a lot of what they send me to go with my music. And a lot of times I'll have a chorus that I will be singing a lyric to, and then they fill in the gaps. I might have some other lines. This one just came to me, and I think it was just because it's Tim, and it had such a his passing had such a profound effect on me, and the lyrics just came. It's just like the music. Sometimes, I mean, you can't explain how it comes. It just comes. And some writers will say it's intervention. It's just stream of consciousness. Um, so I think lyrically, uh, there aren't a ton of lyrics in the song, but I think at first I had "Man of His Own World," and then I switched it to "King of His Own World," and obviously lyrically I am explaining how you hear him sing, and you just are taken by it. But the first line, actually, once I got the first line, um, it kind of wrote itself after that. As he's doing the hang of life, he wants you to come along. That's Tim. He did his thing, and he wanted you come on board with him and hang out. And, the next line, your eyes are wide open when you hear him sing that song because you're like, wow, it's unexpected when you see him because he doesn't look like he'd be a wildly soulful singer. So the lyrics just unfolded and came, and I felt good about that because, as I said, I don't always write lyrics, and this is one of the few songs that I did both sides, music and lyrics. So
I noticed as well, and anyone that hears it as well will probably pick up on the same thing, that it goes through the lyrics. Is like this instrumental celebration. It feels like it's building, and then it settles down at the end. Just it happens in music, but it's a little more unconventional. What was your approach to settling down towards the end of the song?
yeah, um, as I no longer am trying to fit into a mold of a pop tune with my writing, um, I kind of just and I listen to a lot of modern indie bands, and that seems to be a trend, and I it feels good to get out of the verse B verse chorus verse B verse chorus out. I like to change it up. The extended solo section was to me representing a New Orleans send off. That's how I felt about that. You have first the piano, Fender Rhodes, and the guitar, trumpet, and then trombone, and then Jeff does just caps it off with an amazing alto solo, and then then it comes down to that final line and kind of mellows out, and Kenny plays these beautiful guitar runs, and you can't break the spirit of the one. Why can't I know my own lyrics? You can't take. What is that? Anyway, I can't remember what the last line is, but it's I think it's you can't break the spirit of the one that's running free. And that sums up Tim. You couldn't break his spirit, and he was running free when he was alive. And in his passing, he's absolutely running free.
You mentioned the Steely Dan vibe with it, which is quite spot on. What in particular drew you guys to their sound? And maybe I'll ask another question. How does one channel Steely Dan to make it sound that effective given the complexity of
Yeah.
that music?
Well, I'm trying to put the sequence together. I'm trying, I had that chord progression around, and did I think it sounded a little Steely Dan? I guess I did. Um, we did a lot of Steely Dan in Sweetback covers, and we were a little irreverent too because you know the crowd wasn't as we weren't doing reeling it, although we did do reeling in the ears, but we were doing deep cut stuff. And the crowd was like, it's you know they were out there in bars and they wanted to dance or whatever, and we're doing things like the Royal Scam, dun, 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 dun. um I don't know. I think like I said, Tim reminds me of them because we had a lot of fun doing those songs live. And we had a 7-piece, with 2 horns, so it made sense to do it. Of course, we were doing it at the time that they were coming out. It wasn't like we weren't retro covering. We were, these records were just coming out when we were doing this stuff. And I got to a certain point. I had some horn. I don't know what made me think to put horns on. I guess because I started thinking Sweetback. I said, let me get the guys from Sweetback to do this because we were on the cusp back then of trying to get a record deal and doing original material, and we never got there. So in my head, I felt like even though it's 40, 50 years, however many years it is later, we're going to do this. God damn it. We're going to do some original songs with the original members. So that was kind of the impetus. And, after it was done, I remember speaking to Bob drummer, and I said, it feels good to sort of put some closure to this open thing that we never got to finalize. So I did some horn parts myself, and then I thought uh, I was they were okay. And then I was talking to another friend of mine, Alan Zahn, and he said, "Yeah, I'll take a whack at it." But he said, well, why don't you just get Rob Mounsey?" So I thought, wow, Rob Mounsey, that he did like Donald Fagen. He did Gaucho, the horn arrangements on Gaucho. He did Donald Fagen's um so night uh
Night Fly.
Night Flight. He did
Yeah.
all the horn arrangements on that. And so I contacted his manager, who I happen to know, and I asked him if he'd be interested, and he did, and he said yes, and he so that doesn't hurt when you're when you're I wasn't trying to sound like Steely Dan. It's just the kicker for me was people saying my voice sounded like Steely Dan, because I never thought of that. I mean, Donald Fagen has a very unique voice. Um, but I don't know that the reviewer said that, and the Soul Tracks review, they said that, and the Jeff, the horn player, said that too. Yeah, you sound like Donald Fagen. I never, I don't think I was very influenced by Donald Fagen as a singer, just because he's like, that's like trying to be influenced by Willie Nelson or something. I mean, these people
Mhm.
are unique voices. So yeah, I don't know. The horns, um, and I think lyrically too, it kind of lends itself to a Steely Dan thing, although their lyrics are a little more obtuse. But yeah, I mean, it's just for me, and you're familiar with my stuff. Uh, Especially as an artist, I just let it roll. It's really stream of consciousness. I don't think about anything. Honestly, I don't think about it. I feel like getting my mind out of the way uh, allows me to unfold, and that's musically, and in this case lyrically, same thing.
Your connection to Robert LaRoche apparently
Yes.
goes back a ways. Describe how you came to meet him.
Yeah, that's funny. I guess we're noting a trend here, right? Um, Bobby, after I had the success with Dirty Dancing, writing the songs from Dirty Dancing, um, I I a friend of mine, Tommy Allen, and I formed a production company. In fact, it was called OMAD Productions, and he was booking the China Club in New York City, and he got this tape from this band in Massachusetts, and he invited them down to play, and we just really fell in love with them. The band was the Sighs, Sighs, and we got him a deal on Charisma, and unfortunately, Charisma folded just as the record was coming out, so it was kind of like a dead record. Virgin bought him out, but Virgin never had their heart into the following up on the Sighs. So even though the president of Charisma moved to Virgin, um, so it was a weird situation, but we stayed in touch. We were close friends. We did that first record out in LA. Um, we spent 3 months back then. That's what you spent 3 months doing a record. And and then this, the size, they had a one, hit, I'm going to call it a hit, called Think About Soul. And they played with, they did tours with, not Spin Doc, yeah, maybe the Spin Doctors, but, a band called Dada. And then there was, it was the band out of Arizona that had those big hits.
Gin
Yes,
Blossoms? Was
yes,
it? Okay.
they toured with Gin Blossoms. And that song, the song was, top 20, top 10, alternative at the time. Um, and but then, they survived that and made it to Virgin, but then Virgin didn't like, unfortunately for the size, the music at the time, the music people wanted to, or that were signing was, Nirvana and Pearl Jam. So it was a little angry, angsty, and, real alt. And the size were very vocal, harmony, uh, I don't want to say power pop because I always think that's a bad word, but it was in that, jangle pop, let's call it that.
Mhm.
And so it was not, we always said if it was a few years later, it would have survived a little better. But so that's 1993, 94. And the band broke up. Bobby went on to do a bunch of other things. Robert LaRoche went on to do some other things. And I got this studio up here and my record label, as you know, OMED Records. And I said, oh, I know Matt, the guitarist, found some old demos that they did at that time. And every one after another was a great song. So I said, let's come up here, let's track it and put out a record 20 years later. And we did. It was called Wait on Another Day. And it did well. It's a really good record. Um, and then, a few years later, that was just a kind of a one-off, although we did do an EP also with the size. But Bobby was down at this point down in Austin and kind of was developing a different sound for himself as an artist. And he had done a few records down there with someone there. And I'm trying to think of the events. I think he came back up to Massachusetts actually to take care of his mom, and which isn't too far from me. And so we said, let's do a record. And that was Forevermore. Same thing. He would come here, spend 3 or 4 days. We'd track basically his vocals and an acoustic guitar, maybe some electric guitar, and then I would fill in the blanks while he was away. And I'm here. I have multiple guitars. I have, a Hammond organ. I have a piano. I have a Wurlitzer. I have pump organs. I have cellos. I have upright bass. And so whatever it needs to be done, I sort of fill in. And Bobby likes that. He likes that, he gets the gist of the song across to me. And then, I just kind of, that's kind of what I do now, is just kind of flesh it out. And after years of making demos of songs to try and get covers, in the songwriters world, I really learned how to put tracks together. I did it for years, and so that's where my production chops, I guess, came together. And I feel actually, and then when I started doing my own records, which really opened the door, because again, I had no governors, right? No governor. I can do whatever the hell I want. I don't have an artist that I have to, with Bobby, I always run it by him. I record it and I send it to him. And I would say, I don't think he's ever said, I don't like that, do something else. I don't think that's happened yet. So.
What was the most interesting instrument that you did not include, but were considering including on the album? This is a question I asked Robert yesterday. So what were you like? Oh, man, maybe not. We're not going to quite go to that direction.
Uh, well, did I use it? I'm trying to remember. I have a clavioline, which is a 1950s synthesizer, sort of. If you know Baby You're a Rich Man, uh,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
the little thing on the left that John Lennon's playing with an orange. You can play it with an orange because it only plays one note at a time. So you know, so that little thing that's in your left ear, I have one up here. I found it here in Binghamton on a lark, basically. So I was thinking of how I could work that in. I'm trying to remember if I did. I might have. Um, I recently just put it on for someone, a guy named um, Cameron Lowe, James Lowe's son, the Electric Prunes. Cameron has been doing his own thing, and he asked me. I was commenting because he had an Ondialine or something on. I saw it on Facebook, and I said, "Oh, by the way, I have a clavioline." And he goes, "You have a clavioline? Can you put this on my song?" So I did that. But it's either that or I always try and work a sitar in, but I don't think I did on Bobby's. What was that? I was just thinking because we're doing a second record together right now, and what was I thinking? I was going to try it. Maybe it was the clavioline, or maybe the sitar. You know, sometimes I've noted, and I can't remember what songs they are, but where a sitar is reinforcing the melody, you know, the melody that's sort of peripherally around the vocal, and you don't necessarily know it's a sitar. You know, a lot of times sitar, you go, oh, sitar, you know, Indian, but sometimes people have used it in a way that's just kind of just makes a sound that you may not identify, and I'm going to get it in on Bobby's next record for sure.
So looking forward then, between his next album and whatever other projects, solo, etc., between your most recent work with him, King of His Own World, how do those projects influence your next individual musical projects?
Well, King of His Own World will be on my next record. Um, I have about 5 or 6 songs finished. So far, 2 of them will be with the Sweetback guys. Um, I don't know if there'll be a third or not, but other songs on there, I have um, 3 or 4 songs. Another one that Sweetback is going to play on. We're finishing up. Um, it's called Donnybrook Lane, actually, and then there's another one called Don't Wait, which I did all to tape. My 16 track tape machine. I went directly to tape with it, and um, I think that's coming out really good. I've been a lyricist friend of mine. I don't know if you've never interviewed Jason Stutz, Rust Dust.
Never have.
He's another OMAD Records artist. You ought to check him out. And he's a great interview, by the way. Um, he's been he I sent him I just sent him a note. I said, "You have any lyrics laying around?" And um, he said, "Yeah, he did." And then he sent it to me. It was Flotsam and Jetsam, which I never really knew. Do you know what Flotsam and Jetsam is?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, I think I do.
It's
Just like this.
I never knew this. Yes, it's stuff that's floating in the sea.
Right.
Flotsam is natural, I think, natural stuff that's floating in the sea, and jetsam is stuff that gets jettisoned out of boats. So he sent me this lyric, and it was just awesome. And I love to write a song from a lyric. I've done that a number of times. On the last record, I did it with Keith Reed. May he rest in peace. Keith wrote "Whiter Shade of Pale," but I said, "You have any lyrics?" And he sent me this lyric, and I wrote a song on the last record. Um, um, and then so Jason sent me these lyrics, Flotsam and Jetsam, and uh, I finished the song. I sent it to him, and he said, "Yeah, actually, those aren't my lyrics. My wife Nina had that as a poem laying around." And so that was cool. Nina is awesome. She pretty much does every bio for OMAD artists. So that was a surprise. And then he did another. I sent him two more tracks, and he did the Stony Brook Lane lyric, and he's this other one, Don't Wait, which I think is gorgeous. I have to get re-sing it because I didn't sing it right, but it's kind of you know, again, I didn't realize how much R&B influence I've had and soul influence. I didn't realize it, but it's coming out, you know. So we are in the midst of putting together a Christmas OMAD Records Variety Hour Christmas record. And so everybody's on the label has submitted. I have a song. Peter Lewis, Moby Grape fame, has a beautiful song called Baby So Beautiful. Arwen, his daughter, did a cover of Let It Snow. And it's funny because she just did it with an acoustic guitar. She did it on the West Coast. And a guy is whistling. And I think, what is there any other instruments? And I put an upright bass on it. But we went for like a 1930s vibe. So I thinned it out and I made it sound like that. And as I was sampling a 78 to get the first thing that comes on this song is these three singers going, women going, ooh. And it's from a song called something about a blueberry. It's from the early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And I sampled that ooh, 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 and put it on, and it just happened to be in the same key as the Let It Snow that Arwen did. So that's kind of fun. Jason, who I mentioned, Russ Dust, he did an awesome original song with just a few lyrics. And the Sighs have a song that is kind of funny. Robert LaRoche has a song that we're going to put the drums on tomorrow. That should finish that song. And Tommy Pluta, one of the other guys in the Sighs, also did a song called Christmas Time Blues, I think. So it's about 10 or 12 songs. A band that is on my label, although the record's on my label, they disbanded, but a band called the Medics had a song called Parade. And if you ever look it up on Spotify or whatever, it's a really cool song. And he sings about writing songs for Christmas, and it's a wacky lyric, but he does say that. So we're throwing that on there too. So that's next up. We have to have it finished by August, mastered. It's getting mastered on August 15th, and I'm if the stragglers are taking too long, because it takes a long time to get an LP. We're making LPs, and that takes a long time to get an LP.
Yeah. At least you're busy. You got a lot going on here. So, well, anyone who's listened to this, I'm sure they've already listened to the song, but if for some reason they have not, go give it a listen. King of His Own World, John DeNicola, Sweetback, and plenty more to come. John, it was really fun to chat with you yet again. All the best still going forward. We'll keep up with what you're all doing and look forward to those projects and more to come in the next few months and years.
Well, thanks so much. I can't believe it's been 4 years since we last spoke, but let's not wait that long. Maybe I'll come, if you'll have me, I'll come back when the Christmas record is out. And of course, anybody can see what we're doing on OMAD Records, OMAD Records.com. OMAD stands for Ordinary Madness, which was a book by Charles Bukowski, or a story actually by Charles Bukowski.
I was wondering about that. That explains what that is. Very good to know. So maybe we'll do this a little sooner than 4 years from now. Christmas might be a good time for that. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you, John, once again. All the best going forward, and I'll chat with you sometime in the future.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.